The day the aliens came to save us was the day we discovered how dangerous kindness can be. You have to understand, October 12th, 2087, started like any other morning. I remember the smell of rain on the pavement in Tokyo, the sound of the maglev trains humming below Cairo, the feeling of my own heart beating as I sipped coffee on my porch in Lisbon. The sky was a clear, pale blue. Then it wasn't. It wasn't an invasion, not in the way we'd ever imagined. There was no fire, no screaming meteors. The air just shimmered, like heat haze over a desert highway. A sound followed, a low note that you felt in your teeth more than heard, a vibration that made the coffee tremble in my cup. It was beautiful, and that was the most terrifying part. They called themselves the Galathrene. Their ships didn't look like warships. They looked like frozen music, or galaxies spun from violet crystal and silver light. They settled around our planet not in attack formations, but in a perfect, glittering ring, a halo of impossible technology. And then a voice was in our heads, all of us, at once. 7 billion people heard the same calm, gentle words. It wasn't loud, but it was absolute, like a mother speaking to a child who has just hurt itself. Children of Terra, it began, and I felt a shiver that had nothing to do with fear, but with a profound, unsettling pity. We see your pain. Your history is written in scars. We are here to end the cycle. We offer you peace. My neighbor, old Mr. Henderson, came out onto his porch, his face pale. "Do you hear that?" he whispered, though he didn't need to. We all heard it. In the city below, the constant thrum of traffic began to stutter and die. The gentle voice continued. "Your tools of harm are now silent. We do this not to conquer, but to cure. This is our mercy." And just like that, the world turned off. Every plane in the sky became a glider, finding emergency landings in fields and on highways. Every car coasted to a stop. In hospitals, backup generators coughed and failed. The lights in my house flickered once, and then the deep, true quiet of a pre-industrial age fell over everything. I could hear my own breath, the rustle of leaves, the distant cry of a confused seagull. The Galathrene hadn't fired a weapon. They had simply unplugged us. The first week was chaos, masked by that eerie quiet. Without engines, without power, the world began to talk in whispers and shouts. We shared food from melting freezers, gathered water from streams we'd forgotten existed. We learned our neighbors' names. There was fear, yes, a deep, cold fear of helplessness. But underneath it, something else stirred. A stubbornness. You could see it in the set of a farmer's jaw as he hooked his plow to a pair of old horses. You could hear it in the voices of engineers huddled around hand-cranked radios trying to understand the energy field that held us. The Galathrene watched. Their beautiful ships hung there, silent and patient. They sent down shimmering orbs that distributed food packets, nutritious, tasteless bars, and medical aid for those in crisis. They were, in every action, perfectly, undeniably benevolent. And that was the cage. Their kindness was a wall we couldn't see and couldn't climb. They believed they were nursing a sick child to health. They didn't see that the child was an adult who, even while grateful for the medicine, was plotting how to pick the lock on the bedroom door. The focus of that stubbornness found a home deep under the Alps. In the decommissioned Hadron Research Facility, a place built for peacetime science, a woman named Dr. Eris Thorne looked at a dead quantum computer and saw not an end but a different beginning. Eris was famous, or infamous, for a theory she'd published years before, the Thorne constant. It was a wildly complex idea about manipulating localized gravity fields, a way to move immense objects with minimal energy. It was hailed as brilliant, then shelved as useless. A solution searching for a problem, a journal had said. Well, now we had the biggest problem imaginable. I learned about her through the Whisper network, bicycle messengers and runners who became our new internet. They said she had gathered a team, not of soldiers, but of geologists, astrophysicists, even a few eccentric artists who understood structural harmonics. They were working by lamplight using chalkboards and paper, their tools reduced to human minds and determined hands. They weren't trying to build a weapon. The Galathrene's field would stop that instantly. Eris was trying to build a push. Her idea was as simple as it was insane. The Galathrene monitored for aggression, for explosions, for focused energy weapons. But what if our response wasn't an attack? What if it was an adjustment? She theorized that by using the Earth's own geothermal energy, the slow, steady heat of the planet's heart, which their field couldn't touch because it wasn't a weapon, it was just our planet being a planet, they could power a global array of gravitational projectors. They wouldn't shoot at the ships. They would very politely move the ground the ships were parked above. It sounded like a fairy tale. But hope, in a silent world, is a potent fuel. Across the darkened globe, the message spread. In the geothermal plants of Iceland, engineers manually rerouted steam to spin turbines that hadn't turned in weeks. In the deep deserts of Australia, teams realigned abandoned seismic survey probes, their delicate instruments now pointed at the stars. In the ocean, submarines turned into underwater cable layers, connecting a hidden circuit around the world. It was a global project, done in secret, under a sky full of watchers who saw only primitive beings finally learning to cooperate peacefully. They saw our industry and smiled, thinking we were building a monument to their mercy. I joined the effort in my own small way, in Lisbon. My job was communication. Using a network of mirrors and lanterns, based on an old naval code, my team on the hilltops would relay simple, ready signals down the coast. It felt absurd, shining lights while crystal starships loomed overhead. But the night we received the final confirmation from the Pacific sector, and I flashed the all systems go signal north toward France, my hands weren't shaking from fear. They were steady with a feeling I hadn't felt since the silence began. Purpose. We didn't know if it would work. We only knew we had to try. The Galathrene believed they were protecting us from ourselves. But true protection isn't about control. It's about giving someone the tools to stand on their own, even if they stumble. Their mercy was a blanket that smothered. Our answer wasn't going to be a scream. It was going to be a single, collective step. And sometimes the most powerful statement you can make is simply to choose your own ground. We built our answer not with guns, but with the quiet, steady heartbeat of the Earth itself. After the global signal flashed from Lisbon, a different kind of energy pulsed through the silent world. It wasn't electricity. It was determination. You could feel it in the air, a buzz of quiet intention. In the Swiss Alps, deep inside the mountain facility, Dr. Eris Thorne stood in a room that smelled of old rock, warm electronics, and cold coffee. Her chalkboard was a chaotic masterpiece of numbers and symbols, but her hands were calm. She looked at her core team, Maya, the geothermal specialist from Kenya, and Leo, the grumpy but brilliant German gravitic engineer. "The network is live," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "The planet is ready to speak." The plan, Project Cradle, was a secret woven across 7 continents. It used 6,742 decommissioned geological probes, the kind that usually listen for earthquakes or scan for oil. Our teams had spent months manually turning them, like tuning a planet-sized radio dish, aiming them at a single point in space. Their power didn't come from reactors or batteries, which the Galathrene dampening field silenced. It came from the Earth's own warmth. In Iceland, at the Hellisheidi plant, Chief Engineer Björn Karlsson watched as steam, untouched by alien technology, began to turn turbines again. The deep, familiar thrum of the machinery vibrated in his boots. It wasn't much power, but it was ours. It was natural. It was, he thought with a smile, perfectly legal. High above, the Galathrene saw it all. Their sensors, exquisitely sensitive, detected the surge in geothermal activity and the strange alignment of the probes. On their flagship, the chrysalis, the voice, the entity that had spoken to all of us, pondered the data. Its form was a shimmer of light in a serene chamber. The humans are industrious, it communicated to its crew. They are harnessing their world's energy in unity. This is the first bloom of peace. They are building something beautiful. The irony was total. They saw a global art project, a gesture of gratitude. Their misunderstanding was our camouflage. Down on the surface, in a small town in New Zealand, a young woman named Kiri was part of the string section. Her job was to check the thousands of kilometers of fiber optic cable that had been laid by hand through tunnels and along old railway lines to connect the probe array. That morning, she was in a damp maintenance tunnel near Christchurch, the beam of her hand-cranked flashlight cutting through the gloom. She placed her palm on a junction box. It was warm. A faint green status light glowed. It was working. She let out a breath she didn't know she was holding and sent a runner back to the local hub with a simple note. Section 23, humming and ready. It was a tiny piece of a vast puzzle, but her chest swelled with pride. She was helping to write a sentence the whole galaxy would hear. The emotional weight was heaviest in places that had known real conflict. In a community center in Hiroshima, a place dedicated to peace, Elder Aiko Tanaka watched her grandchildren play with other kids by candlelight. She knew the stories of the flash that had once stolen a city's breath. When the local coordinator for Project Cradle, a young engineer named Kenji, had come to her, hesitant, to explain what they were doing, she had listened in silence. He feared she would oppose it, seeing it as another violence. Instead, she had poured him tea and said, "There is a difference between a weapon that destroys and a tool that protects. You are not building a sword. You are building a shield that can also be a door." Her blessing became the moral compass for their entire sector. 2 weeks before the planned activation, a problem arose in the Sahara Array. A sandstorm had buried a critical relay station near Tamanrasset. The temperature on the ground was 50 degrees Celsius. The Galathrene satellites would notice if a large group moved there. So it was a lone geologist, Samir, who volunteered. He trekked for 3 days with a camel named Bess, his water supply running low, guided only by the stars. When he found the station, it was just a small metal dome, almost completely swallowed by orange sand. He dug with his hands until his fingers were raw, cleared the vents, and used his own portable solar charger, a tiny permitted technology, to reboot the system. As the console lights flickered on, he lay back in the shade of the dome, sharing his last date with Bess. The vast, silent desert around him felt less like a prison and more like a stage, waiting for the play to begin. Back in the Alps, the final countdown was a strangely quiet affair. There was no dramatic war room, just a dimly lit chamber with a single, flickering holographic display of Earth, dotted with thousands of green lights. Eris, Maya, and Leo watched it. The air was thick with tension. "The Galathrene fleet has shifted position," Leo noted, adjusting his glasses. "They're moving into a tighter ceremonial formation. Probably think we're about to launch fireworks in their honor." He snorted. Maya placed a hand on Aris's shoulder. "The heart rate of the planet is steady. She's ready." Aris thought of her daughter, Ilara, named for a star, who was safe in a community shelter in Norway. She was doing this for her. For Ilara's right to choose her own future. She took a deep breath. The system wasn't controlled by a button. It was a verbal command, keyed to her voice print. She leaned toward the simple microphone. "This is Dr. Eris Thorne," she said, her voice clear in the stillness. "To all human stations, from the deep ice to the deep sea. Thank you for your trust. Now, let's go home." She spoke the activation phrase. It wasn't a shout. It was a gentle, firm sentence from a children's story she used to read to Ilara. "Cradle, rock us steady." For a second, nothing happened. Then a sound began. Not from the sky, but from deep, deep below. It was the lowest note imaginable. A bass rumble that rose up through the rock, through the foundations of buildings, through the soles of your feet. In Lisbon, I felt it first in my chair, a vibration that traveled up my spine. The empty glass on my table began to sing, a high, pure ring. Outside, the leaves on the olive trees shivered, though there was no wind. In orbit, the beautiful Galathrene ships suddenly shimmered, their stable positions disrupted. On the chrysalis, the voice felt a wave of profound confusion. The sensors screamed with data, but none of it made sense. There was no explosion, no energy beam, no projectile. Instead, their scans showed the gravitational field of Earth itself, flexing, like a muscle they never knew the planet had. On the surface, people poured into the streets, not in panic, but in wonder. They pointed upwards, because the stars, the fixed ancient stars, were moving. No, we were. The deep rumble settled into a steady, comforting hum, the sound of a world waking up. The Galathrene's gentle cage of silence was still technically active. Our old engines were dead, but we weren't using an engine. We were using a principle. We were using a push. The voice of the Galathrene finally broke its silence, broadcasting to Eris's facility. The calm, maternal tone was gone, replaced by a tremor of awe. "What are you doing?" it asked. Not as a demand, but as a genuine, bewildered question. Eris looked at the hologram, at the beautiful, troubled light that represented a billion-year-old civilization. She smiled, a tired, proud smile. "You wanted to give us a peaceful home," she said, "but a home isn't a place you're stuck in. It's a place you carry with you. We're just adjusting the address." And as the human world, wrapped in its own gentle, impossible field, began to slowly, gracefully drift up and out of its old orbit, leaving the moon behind, a new emotion blossomed across the silent planet. It wasn't triumph over the Galathrene. It was something better. It was the sheer, dizzying joy of agency. We had been handed a sentence of peaceful oblivion, and together, with nothing but our wits and the warmth beneath our feet, we had written a new ending. We weren't escaping. We were simply choosing our own direction and taking our blue-green home along for the ride. The universe, it turned out, had plenty of room for a little quiet courage. They told us we were too violent to be free, so we moved the entire Earth to find a kinder sky. That deep hum, the one that started in the planet's bones and vibrated up through your feet, never stopped. It became our new background music. A steady, comforting pulse that meant we were moving. For the first few days, it was all anyone could talk about. In Lisbon, I'd stand on my porch every morning and watch the sky. The sun still rose and set, but the constellations, those old familiar pictures, began to subtly stretch and twist. The North Star was no longer constant. It was a strange feeling, not scary, but profoundly dizzying, like the whole universe had taken a gentle step to the left. Up there, the Galathrene fleet was in, well, I wouldn't call it panic. For a species that hadn't known conflict in millions of years, it was probably pure, undiluted confusion. Their beautiful crystal ships, which had hung so serenely in a perfect ring, now scrambled like startled fireflies. They had to keep moving to avoid the very ground they were orbiting, because the ground was politely but firmly coming up to meet them. They couldn't fire. Their doctrine, their very biology, forbade it. All they could do was retreat, and we kept going. Dr. Eris Thorne's facility under the Alps became the heart of this journey, but not its brain. The brain was everywhere. See, steering a planet isn't like driving a car. You can't just turn a wheel. It's a conversation with gravity itself, and that conversation needed millions of voices. Data started pouring in from every corner of the Project Cradle network. The probes in the Pacific Ocean reported strange, gentle tides. The sensors on Mount Everest detected a minuscule change in atmospheric pressure. All of it was fed into the humming core in Switzerland, where Eris, Maya, and Leo worked in endless shifts, their eyes red from staring at screens, their faces lit by the soft glow of holographic star maps. The world's best astronomers, many of whom had been using telescopes as paperweights for months, suddenly had the job of a lifetime. From a repurposed observatory in Chile, Dr. Chinwe Okoro and her team tracked our progress. "We are not just drifting," she announced over the restored low-band radio net, her voice crackling with excitement. "We are on a course, a very specific one. We're using the gravity of Jupiter like a slingshot. Someone," she said with a laugh, "has done the math. Very, very good math." That someone was a 19-year-old named Ravi, hiding in a library basement in Mumbai. Before the silence, he was a gaming prodigy, famous for plotting insane, winning strategies in complex space simulators. When the networks went dark, he'd used his gaming rig's isolated processor and a mountain of stolen notebook paper to calculate gravitational pathways. He'd sent his best one, a route that used the gas giants to steer us toward a promising cluster of stars, to the Alps by a chain of bicycle couriers. Leo, the grumpy engineer, had looked at Ravi's scrawled equations and declared, "This kid plays too many video games, and he's a genius." Ravi's course became our roadmap, but a map is one thing. Life on the road is another. We were a traveling world. The Galathrine's dampening field was still active on anything it defined as a weapon, but our new cradle technology ran on geothermal heartbeats, which it didn't understand. So we had momentum, but not our old power. Cities were still dark, lit by candles and oil lamps and ingenious reflectors that caught the sunlight. It felt like we were living in a giant, cozy, moving camper van. Communities transformed. My neighborhood in Lisbon became a village. Mr. Henderson, my old neighbor, revealed he was a master beekeeper. His hives, confused by the shifting light at first, eventually settled down, and we had honey to trade for fish from the group down by the Tagus River. We learned to bake bread in communal clay ovens. The smell of wood smoke and baking dough in the morning, under a sky full of strange new stars, is a smell I'll never forget. Not everything was easy. We had to become planetary mechanics. In California, a fault line near the dormant probe array in the Mojave Desert started getting jittery with the new stresses. A team of volunteers, led by a retired geologist named Frank, had to go in and manually adjust the field projectors to ease the pressure. They worked for 72 hours straight, under the baking sun, tightening bolts and recalibrating systems with hand tools. When they finally stabilized it, the data showed the seismic tension melting away. Frank, who was 70 years old, radioed in, his voice rough with dust and pride. "Tell Iris the old girl's suspension just got a tune-up. Smooth riding ahead." The Galathrene watched all of this. They didn't leave. How could they? Their prime directive was to protect life, and now the life they'd tried to protect was piloting its own planet into deep space. It was a philosophical nightmare for them. Their ships followed us at a careful distance, a glittering, puzzled escort. Occasionally, the voice would try to communicate. The tone was no longer pitying. It was curious. "You are risking your ecosystem," the voice echoed in Aris's chamber one day. "A stellar migration is unstable. Your calculations, while admirable, have a 2.3% margin of error. Why choose such peril?" Aris was eating a dry protein bar, the kind the Galathrene had provided months before. She finished chewing, took a sip of water, and answered, "Because a 2.3% chance of failure is better than a 100% certainty of a cage. You offered us safety without freedom. That's not safety. That's just a prettier kind of falling." There was a long silence from the voice. Then, a simple, soft question. "What is freedom worth if you are cold and in the dark?" Maya, listening in, leaned toward the mic. Her voice was warm. "We are not cold. We have each other, and we are making new lights." She gestured to a screen showing a feed from Norway, where Eris's daughter Ilara and other children were hanging thousands of handmade lanterns in the trees, their little faces glowing in the soft light. Our journey past Jupiter was the moment everything changed, for us and for them. We called it the Grand Tour. As we approached, the giant planet filled the sky. It wasn't a dot anymore. It was a vast, swirling marble of ochre and cream and that great red eye, a storm bigger than our whole world. The sight was so breathtakingly huge it silenced entire cities. People just stood outside, heads craned back, tears on their cheeks. The gravitational tug was immense. Our cradle hum deepened to a powerful chord, holding us steady in the giant's grip as we stole a sliver of its momentum to fling us further outward. On the Galathrene flagship, they observed this madness. To use a planet's gravity so precisely, with such delicate control, was an art form they'd never considered. It wasn't technology of destruction. It was technology of harmony. Harmony with forces so vast they could shatter worlds. The voice finally understood. We weren't fighting the universe. We were dancing with it. And we'd learned the steps in the dark. After the Jupiter slingshot, their ships didn't just follow. One of them, a smaller scout vessel, moved closer. It didn't broadcast threats or demands. It began to broadcast data. Clean, real-time readings of the interstellar dust density ahead. Warnings of a minor meteoroid stream on our path. Suggestions for a 0.5% course correction to catch a more favorable stellar current. It was help. Not the help of a warden, but of a fellow traveler. Eris looked at the data, then at her team. What do we do with this? Leo adjusted his glasses, studying the figures. It's good info. Better than ours. The kid in Mumbai will want to see it. He paused. They're not trying to stop us anymore. They're trying to make sure we don't crash. We accepted the data. We even sent a thank you, a simple burst of prime numbers, a universal hello. A few days later, a package descended on a beam of light not to a capital city, but to a field in the Midwestern United States. It wasn't food bars. It was a library. A data crystal containing open-source Galathrene designs for atmospheric stabilizers, water reclamation systems, and low-energy growth lights. Technology that worked with nature, not against it. The note attached, in translated text, read, "For the gardeners on the moving world." That was the real victory. Not that we escaped, but that we were seen. Truly seen. Not as violent children, but as determined, clever, stubborn neighbors who loved their home so much they'd take it with them. The Galathrene's mission of mercy had failed, but in its place, something better was born. Respect. We are still traveling now. The hum is the sound of home. We've planted gardens under growth lights. Our children are learning the new star charts, and every night we look up at a sky that is ours to choose. The Galathrene fleet is still out there, a distant constellation of friendly lights. Sometimes we trade weather reports. They're fascinated by our snow. We lifted our homeworld, not to conquer, but to find a place where we belonged. And in doing so, we didn't just gain a new star to orbit. We taught an ancient, kind species, and maybe ourselves, a simple truth. The greatest force in the universe isn't gravity, or even love. It's the stubborn, wonderful, creative will to build a better tomorrow, no matter where you have to move heaven and earth to find it. And sometimes, all you need to do to change your destiny is to decide to bring your whole world along for the ride. You know you've made a point when the aliens who came to silence you ask, in a whisper of awe, "Can you teach us how to do that?" The journey settled into a rhythm. The great hum of the cradle drive was the world's heartbeat now, a sound so constant you only noticed it in the rare moments it paused for a system check. We were gardeners on a starship made of rock and water, in greenhouses lit by the gentle blue-white glow of the Galathrene growth lamps. We grew strawberries under strange constellations. Kids in what used to be Lisbon, including my niece Sophia, had school projects about tracking our course through the Kuiper Belt. Her class built a model of our solar system from recycled plastic, showing our little blue marble on a string, swinging out past the orbit of Neptune. It felt normal. Wonderfully, bizarrely normal. But the real story wasn't just our travel. It was the conversation. The Galathrene ships, which once formed a silent, perfect cage, now flew in a loose, graceful escort formation. They had stopped broadcasting directives. Instead, they opened a channel for questions. And the questions, at first, were practical. The voice would speak to Dr. Eris Thorne, not in the mind of billions, but on a simple audio channel in her Alpine control room. "Your biomass recycling in the sector you call Scandinavia," the voice would say, its melodic tone now touched with genuine curiosity. "The yield is 8% higher than our models predicted. What variable are we missing?" Eris would smile, sipping her famously bad instant coffee. "Mycorrhizal fungi," she'd answer. "We're reintroducing native fungi to the soil. They form a network with the plant roots. They share nutrients. They talk to each other." There would be a pause on the line, a silence filled not with judgment, but with processing. "A planetary network," the voice would finally respond. "Like your probe array, but biological. You think in networks." That was the revelation. They had seen our technology as a crude tool, then as a startling feat of engineering. But now they were beginning to see the pattern behind it. The human mind doesn't just build a thing, it connects things. We saw a fungus and a forest and a faulty gravity probe and a video game strategy, and we wove them into a rope strong enough to pull a planet. The request that changed everything didn't come from the voice. It came from a lower-tier Galathrene science officer, identified as Kale. His transmission was shy, almost embarrassed. It was directed not to Ares, but to Ravi, the 19-year-old gaming prodigy in Mumbai, whose math was now guiding Earth. "Your gravity-assisted trajectory around the gas giant. Your simulation must have been remarkable," Kyle sent, his translated text appearing on Ravi's patched-together monitor. "Our models are deterministic. Yours appears to have intuition. Can you explain the heuristic?" Ravi, who hadn't slept properly in days, blinked at the screen. He was surviving on canned chai and adrenaline. He typed back, his fingers flying. "It's not a heuristic, it's a feeling. You run the sim 1,000 times, you crash into moons 999 times, but on the 1,000th run, you see a path that's not just efficient, it's elegant. You just know. It's like when a song is right." The Galathrene on the other end was silent for a full 10 minutes. Ravi thought he'd broken them. Then, a new message appeared. "We do not have a concept for elegant in navigational mathematics. We have optimal and suboptimal. Can you define elegant with numbers?" Ravi laughed. He couldn't help it. He called over his little sister, Priya, who was drawing at the table. "Priya, how do you know which picture is the good one?" She held up a drawing of a spaceship that looked like a happy cat. "It makes me smile inside," she said, and went back to coloring. Ravi typed that. He added, "The math has to make the universe smile inside. The numbers have to feel right together. Your optimal path stressed Jupiter's magnetosphere by 0.02%. My elegant path massaged it. It's a partnership, not a theft." That message was copied and studied on every Galathrene ship. For a species that had perfected logic, the idea of an elegant solution, born from feeling and repetition, was a new color in their spectrum. The moment of true kinship, though, happened over a broken water pipe. Not a cosmic crisis, but a simple, soggy problem. In the underground gardens of New Beijing, a main pipe carrying meltwater from the external heating elements burst. It was flooding a sector that grew 30% of their staple grains. The Galathrene sensors, which monitored our biosphere for catastrophic risk, detected the water loss and temperature drop. But their protocols offered only one solution: to beam down a perfect, prefabricated replacement conduit. There was a problem. The pipe ran through a historic archaeological site, a delicate dig from pre-silence times. The Galathrene conduit would have crushed it. The Chinese engineer in charge, Li Wei, refused. "The past waters the future," she sent over the local channel, her voice firm. "We will fix it our way." What the Galathrene watched then wasn't a high-tech miracle. It was a ballet of human ingenuity. Li Wei's team used 3D printers, powered by hand-cranked generators, to make custom pipe joints that snaked around the artifacts. They recruited a team of ceramic artists from the nearby community to fire emergency clay seals in a kiln heated by compost. A group of schoolchildren braided plant fibers into temporary waterproof seals, based on an old local craft. It was messy, illogical, and used at least 6 different technologies that had no business working together. But in 12 hours, the leak was stopped, the archaeology was preserved, and the garden was saved. The Galathrene observer, Kyle, requested the full sensor log of the event. He studied not the leak, but the response. He saw the fusion of ancient craft and modern print, of child's play and engineering. He saw a society that didn't see a single problem with a single solution, but a web of relationships where a broken pipe involved historians, artists, children, and engineers. His next message to the global human network was simple. We have analyzed the pipe incident. Your solution was not optimal. It was beautiful. We have no equivalent process. We would like to learn. And so, the teachers became the students. We started sharing not just data, but stories. We sent them our folk tales about clever animals solving problems. They sent us their harmonic equations for stable ecosystems. Our musicians composed songs using the resonant frequency of our cradle drive. Their AI composers returned arrangements that made the stars outside seem to pulse in time. The Galathrene had come to offer us a single, perfect, silent future. They found us building a million different, noisy, interconnected ones. And instead of being horrified, they were enchanted. They realized that peace isn't the absence of sound, it's the harmony of many different voices. And humanity's voice, it turns out, is a brilliant, chaotic, beautiful choir. We didn't just lift our homeworld to escape them. We lifted it to show them what home really means. It's not a place you are given. It's a place you build, every day, with every connection you make, with every elegant solution, and every repaired pipe. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can build isn't a tool or a ship, but a bridge. And on that bridge, you might just meet a friend you never expected, who was waiting to learn how to see the universe smile. We arrived at our new star not as refugees, but as neighbors bringing a housewarming gift for the galaxy. The day the star called Solis Nova filled our sky with its warm gold and amber light was a quiet celebration. There were no parades. It was better than that. In Lisbon, I walked down to the river with Mr. Henderson. We stood there, 2 old men, watching the light dance on the water in a way we hadn't seen in years. It was a different dance with a different sun, but the water still shimmered. He didn't say anything. He just put a jar of his honey in my hand. The taste of it, sweet and familiar under a brand new sun, was the taste of home. Real home. The kind you choose. The cradle's hum shifted from a tone of travel to one of settling, a deep, contented sigh. Our planet gently eased into a wide, stable orbit around this gentle star. The sky here was richer, dusted with more stars than we'd ever seen from the old neighborhood. The children had new constellations to name. My niece Sophia and her friends called the brightest one the gardener, for the way its light seemed to make the plants in our greenhouses reach up. The Galathrene fleet didn't leave. They parked in a higher orbit, a crown of crystal and light above our new world. But they weren't wardens. They were guests. And they were waiting, with a patience that was no longer condescending, but deeply respectful. The invitation came a week later. Not a command, not even a request. A question. The voice spoke to Eris, and for the first time we all heard a flicker of something like nervousness in its tone. The species of this arm gather for a convocation of roots, it said. It is a sharing of wisdom, of stories of home and growth. We have never brought a guest. We have never needed to, but we would be honored if Earth would share its story. This was it. Not a test of strength, but a test of heart. What was our story? Were we the angry children who ran away, or were we something more? Aris put the question to the global net. The answer didn't come from a government or a scientist. It came from Ilara, her 10-year-old daughter in Norway. We should give them a seed, she said, her voice clear on the community radio. But not just any seed, a story seed. The idea spread like sunshine. From every corner of our traveling world, people brought forward their story seeds. A musician in New Orleans composed a simple, haunting melody that contained the rhythm of our old ocean waves and the new cradle hum. A weaver in Ghana created a small, beautiful panel showing our journey from a blue dot to a gold one, with threads of galathrene crystal woven into the path. A poet in Kyoto wrote a haiku about the taste of strawberries under two suns. And of course, Ravi, from Mumbai, encoded his elegant Jupiter slingshot equation onto a data crystal, alongside a video of his sister Priya explaining why her cat spaceship drawing was the best one. The physical seed came from the oldest grove of olive trees in Portugal, a place that had weathered centuries. A cutting was grafted onto a hardy rootstock and placed in a container of soil from every continent. It wasn't just a plant, it was a promise of growth, built from the pieces of our whole world. Dr. Eris Thorne, Leo, and Maya were chosen to go. But they didn't take a spaceship. They stepped onto a galathrene shuttle, a vessel of soft light and whispering air. As the doors closed, Eris later told us, she felt a moment of pure fear. Then she looked at the case in her hands, holding the olive sapling, and she felt calm. The convocation was held in the heart of the galathrene flagship, the chrysalis. The chamber wasn't a cold, metallic hall. It was a garden of light and sound where other species, a handful of peaceful civilizations the galathrene nurtured, projected their essence. There were swirling patterns of color that were the history of a water world, and chords of sound that told of a species that lived in harmony with solar winds. Then it was Earth's turn. Eris didn't show them battles or blueprints. She held up the olive sapling. "This is a story seed from Earth," she began. "It comes from a tree that lives for thousands of years, that survives fire and drought and always sends out new shoots. Its fruit gives oil that can heal, fuel a lamp, or make a meal delicious. That is our first lesson. One thing can have many purposes if you look at it with curious eyes." Then she played the New Orleans melody. She showed the weaving from Ghana. She recited the haiku. She let Ravi's equation flash in the air next to Priya's grinning face. Finally, she told the story of the broken pipe in New Beijing, of the historians, the artists, the children, and the engineers. "You came to us with one beautiful, perfect answer," Eris said, her voice echoing in the silent, attentive chamber. "Silence. Peace. But we are a species of many answers. We believe that a pipe can be fixed without breaking history, that a path through the stars can be elegant, that a child's drawing holds truth. Our strength was never in our weapons. It was in our connections. We connected fungi to forests and video games to gravity to save our home. And now, we wish to connect with you." She offered the olive sapling to the shimmering form of the voice. "This is our story. It is not finished. We would like to plant it here, with you, as a neighbor, so we can grow together." There was a silence in the convocation so deep it felt like the vacuum of space. Then, something extraordinary happened. The voice reached out, not with a beam of light, but with a delicate, tendril-like projection of its own energy. It cradled the container holding the sapling. And then, from the other gathered species, colors and sounds drifted forward, touching the leaves. A blessing, an acceptance. The voice spoke, and for the first time its words were not translated in our minds as children of Terra. "Welcome," it said, "gardeners of Earth, teachers of elegance, keepers of many answers. Welcome to the neighborhood." When Eris, Maya, and Leo returned, they brought back a gift. It was a small, clear sphere. Inside was a miniature, perfect galaxy, slowly turning. "It is a map," the voice had explained. "Not of stars, but of stories. It shows every civilization in this arm who has shared their seed at the convocation. Your light is now part of it." We placed it in the old United Nations building in Geneva, which was now a global community center. People from all over came to see it. They'd look at that tiny, brilliant point of light that was us, connected by glowing threads to so many others. The galathrene didn't give us back our old weapons. They became irrelevant. Instead, They helped us build the first true starport, a graceful structure that looked like a growing crystal tree, where their shuttles and our first new gentle ships could meet. They didn't give us back our silent world. They gave us a symphony of new voices to listen to. We had set out to prove we were not prisoners. We ended up proving we were partners. We lifted our homeworld to find freedom, and in doing so, we found something even better. Family. A big, strange, wonderful, interstellar family. And as I sit here on my porch in Lisbon, under the light of Solis Nova, listening to the hum of a world at peace in its chosen place, I realize the greatest human magic of all. It's not the power to move planets. It's the power to move hearts, including our own. And that is a light that can never be silenced, no matter how far you travel. Our story doesn't end with a grand ceremony or a final dramatic speech. It continues in the soft, daily hum of a world that found its voice. That's the thing about a journey. The arrival is just the beginning of a new way of living. The Galathrene, whom we once saw as distant and unknowable, became our starward neighbors. Their elegant ships are a common sight now, docked at the Arbor Starport, that beautiful tree-like structure grown from a blend of their crystal and our recycled composites. The trade isn't for metals or energy. It's for culture. They adore our music, especially jazz and classical guitar. We're fascinated by their harmonic light sculptures, which can make you feel the warmth of a sunrise just by looking at them. Old Mr. Henderson, my beekeeping neighbor, regularly sends jars of his Lisbon honey up to the chrysalis. Last week, he received a delicate, glowing pollen from a Galathrene garden world in return. His bees made a new batch of honey that glows faintly in the dark. The kids love it. Our children are growing up in a universe that is fundamentally friendly. They learn standard math, but they also learn elegant solution design from Ravi, who now teaches at the new Orbital University. They study xenobotany alongside Earth history. The pipe incident in New Beijing is in their textbooks, not as a footnote about plumbing, but as a core lesson in interdisciplinary problem-solving and cultural preservation. The cradle drive's hum is still there. We've tuned it, softening it to a note that helps certain crops grow better. It's the sound of our safety, our accomplishment, our lullaby. We don't plan on moving again anytime soon, but knowing we could is a quiet comfort. The technology is shared freely in the convocation archives. A few other species facing cosmic dangers have asked to study it. We send our engineers to help, not as conquerors, but as fellow gardeners showing others how to gently repot their world. Sometimes on a clear night you can see more than just stars and Galathrene ships. You can see the soft, green and blue running lights of the ESV Curiosity, our first true starship built with our new friends. Its mission isn't exploration for resources, but for connection. Its crew carries story seeds, music, art, equations, and yes, olive saplings, to the next star over, where a young civilization is just learning to look up. They go not as teachers or saviors, but as fellow travelers who have a funny story about the time they had to move their entire house. I still sit on my porch. The light is different, warmer. The air smells of the sea and the new exotic blossoms from the shared gardens. I think about that first day, the fear, the overwhelming silence, the feeling of being so small. We were small, but we were also countless. And when countless small voices decide to hum the same tune of determination, the vibration can move worlds. They refuse to fire. So we lifted our homeworld. And in the lifting, we didn't just find a new star. We found a better version of ourselves. We found that our humanity, our messy, creative, stubborn, connective brilliance, wasn't a flaw to be silenced. It was a gift to be shared. And the whole galaxy, it turns out, was waiting for a gift just like it. If this story moved you, remember, you carry that same spark of elegant, stubborn hope. Use it to build bridges. Use it to plant seeds. Use it to gently, firmly move your own world toward the light. Subscribe for more tales of humanity's quiet triumphs among the stars.